Mommy, I'm getting cold. I know, sweetheart, I know. I just want to go to sleep. No, no, stay awake just another hour. It will be sunny soon. But I can already see the sun coming out. It all started a few months ago when my family decided to go on a family road trip on an Alaskan tour. My husband Steven, 32 years old, was taking my daughter Lana, 15, and me, Carol, 32 years old, on a trip we would never forget. It started out fantastic as we took a cruise around the state, staring into the amazing lights and scenery. We were supposed to stay there for a few weeks. On our last week, we got off the ship and checked into a hotel as my husband wanted to see the city life. This is where things get blurry. The next thing I remember is we were in our car rental and I was extremely tired. I couldn't move, could barely breathe, and the heater in the car wasn't helping my hot flashes. I tried calling out to Stephen, but he wouldn't answer. In the corner of my eye, I saw him focus solely on the road. I tried calling out to him again. Stephen, barely acknowledging me, he began shaking his head.
Lana.
Tilting my head back, I could see my daughter sprawled across the back seats of the car, passed out. What?
I'm sorry.
Stephen pained out.
I'm sorry it had to be this way. I needed an out, and I can't pretend anymore.
What are you talking about? My entire body was numb, my lips barely moving. What was wrong with me? He began shaking his head faster as if another thought had come to him.
You trapped us, Carol, you, not me. Why am I saying sorry?
Stephen, what's wrong?
Oh, don't act like you care now. I had to do this.
Do what? I was getting tired again, but I was curious to understand what he had done.
I want a restart in life, and I can't do that with you, too, attached at my hip.
He sounded crazy. It was barely clicking in my head. Honey, what are you saying?
It was you, okay? You and Lana ruined any possible amount of happiness I could have. Sure, I had a part for being careless, but hey, we were young and dumb, and then you got pregnant at 17 years old. What else could be worse? I wanted to put her up for adoption, start anew right then and there, but no, you wanted to keep her, and I stayed out of pity, ignoring my feelings. Look what you have done. I have let it fester far too long. It's my turn to be selfish, and like you, I'm not asking for permission.
What? Not once had you mentioned you were unhappy.
Why should I?
He answered sarcastically.
You had our whole life planned for us as soon as we graduated high school.
What? Where are you taking us? I still couldn't believe what was happening. I was barely processing my surroundings or what Stephen was going to do. Was he going to kill us? That wouldn't make sense. I have known this man nearly all my life, and not once has he shown signs of being deranged. When he didn't respond, I asked a different question. Are you going to kill us? I couldn't believe I was asking this, but his reaction was not granting me any security.
I wish I could, but I can't stomach it. It wasn't all bad either. We had fun times, but a man can only fake it for so long.
After that, I blacked out. He must have drugged our drinks while at the hotel. Since Lana was younger and smaller, she wouldn't fight against the drug more than I did. When I woke up, I was lying in a pile of snow in the middle of the woods and mountain tops. I looked to my right and saw Lana barely waking up as well, dotting her eyes with the corner of her fingers. Mom, where are we? Where's Dad? I didn't know what to say. I wanted to pretend like everything Stephen and I spoke about in the car was a horrible, terrible, bad dream, but it was real. I wanted to cry, to sob my eyes out of anger, sadness, and frustration, but I had to remind myself that I had to stay strong for her, for us to survive. Dad did this. What are you talking about? For the next 10 minutes, I tried explaining to her what he had told me and what that meant for us. She couldn't believe it. My heart ached for her. She was only 15 years old, a freshman in high school, and now she was faced with the possibility of death because her father was crazy. Maybe this was all my fault. These thoughts plagued my brain for a while. She began crying and didn't stop for about 20 minutes. I held her to me, letting her sob for the both of us. This can't be real. This can't be. Dad's coming back. I wish I was lying, baby, but I don't think he is. What are we going to do? She hiccuped. I don't know. We knew we couldn't stay in the spot in fear of freezing to death, so we began walking, but to where? To what end? If starvation or the weather didn't kill us, a wild animal most certainly would. After a few hours of blistering our hands, we made a fire. It had a hard time staying lit, but luckily I enrolled Lana in a survival camp when she was in middle school, so those skills came in handy. In the coming weeks, we lived off of wild berries and snow. We were extremely malnourished, but that didn't stop us from trying to stay alive. We were bound to come across wild animals, and when we did, we were not lucky. A 3-pack wolves came to us, and unfortunately Lana was terribly bit on the leg. The only reason we survived was I found a log large enough to catch on fire and hurled it their way, causing them to scram in fear. The snow wasn't melting anytime soon. Right above Lana's ankle was engorged with a large and deep bite mark. We didn't know what to do. What if the next pack comes our way? What if a bear? Anything and everything could be around the corner, and in some ways it was a good thing this was the first time we saw an animal. I helped with Lana's wounds as best as I could, wrapping it securely with the only fabric I had on my back. My soiled t-shirt was stained with dirt, blood, and sand. I zipped my winter coat all the way up my neck. The bleeding eventually stopped, but now I was worried about infection. She was in great pain and much stress. I didn't know what to do. We began to hear howling in the distance, and she began to cry. Mommy, I'm so scared. She began calling me Mommy the second day we were in the woods, and I reveled in it. I finally had an idea. We were going to climb one of the trees so that no large animal could come our way, but considering we barely had food in our stomachs and we were down a leg for use, it was a complex process to get up the tree. For the next 30 minutes, we tortured our way up the trunk. She screamed in pain, and I tried my best to calm her so as not to attract attention. When we were high enough, I noted the pluses and the minuses of being up here. We could see much easier across the skyline. The reason we hadn't done this sooner was the lack of warmth. We had no fire and no nearby foods except a few handful of berries that was tucked into our pockets. We would have to come down eventually, but how? With Lana's injury, I couldn't comprehend how much time she had left if she were to die of infection or the weather conditions. She began to whine daily from the pain and the cold. I only allowed her to sleep when the sun was out, just in case the absence of it made her stay asleep and never awake again. I slept a few hours here and there, but never long enough to regenerate me. When I checked her wound, I noticed it turned a gangly greenish color. I was growing increasingly worried. When she wasn't paying attention, I would cry softly. If she saw my weakness, she would very much give up entirely. We were getting weaker, tired, and hungrier. I didn't know what else to do except pray. The bright side to being on top of the tree was that I could see farther, long and wide. In the distance, I could swear I saw artificial light flickering. I could be imagining things, but that was a start. That night, I decided that I was going to have to venture out alone to get help. Whatever extra clothing I had on me, I gave to her. My thermos, underpants, and long socks strapped across her forearms and around her face. I went traveling to find more berries that I could master. I then told her that if she grew thirsty, all she had to do was shake the tree branches above her and snow would fall on her lap. I didn't know how long it would take, but I had to try. After giving a tearful goodbye to my daughter, I began my trek. I got a large stick and began burning markers into passing trees so that I could find my way back to her. What I saw on my excursion is hard to talk about. I saw and did things I am not proud of sharing. I'm just happy that most of the more dangerous animals were hibernating. But day 15, I almost lost hope. My daughter and I were in the snow for a total of 32 days, and half of it I was trying to find help that felt unattainable. I barely stopped or took any breaks. I have the scars on my ankles to prove it. Then a miracle happened. I found a road. I nearly screamed in happiness. I didn't know when the next car would come, so I began walking one way. It took a few hours, but I found headlights. I cried in hysteria, barely able to form words. The couple helped me up, as at this point I had collapsed on the floor. They sat me in their car and tried driving off. But I told them I also had a daughter in the woods and that we had to stay and call the police to get her. There was no time for questioning, as I honestly didn't even know if she was still alive. They did as I asked, and in an hour or so, a squad of police and a helicopter came to our aid. I wish I could say it was easy to spot her, but it wasn't. It took an additional 3 days to find her. By the time we got to her, she was barely breathing. They were able to save her successfully, but there was a cost. Lana lost her leg due to the infection. She uses a prosthetic leg now. After getting to the hospital and her surgery went successful, it was time for questioning. I didn't know where to begin, so I spilled whatever would catch. I shared everything I knew about Steven and how we got to the woods. I soon discovered that he had gone missing at the same time as us. Allegedly, he never came home, so our entire family thought we were all dead. I couldn't believe it. He must be hiding and changed his name or something. It took months to find him, but when we did, I knew what I was going to do. He was no longer in America, nor was his name Steven. David lived in Australia and he was getting married very soon to a beautiful young woman. After the legal team of America organized with Australia, we had a chance to get him. They had to be quick and quiet about it, as he could easily slip away again. While working on the case, I became close with the detective Seth on the scene. I had one favor to ask him. Let me be there.
I don't know if that's possible.
Please.
I want to look into his eyes when I ruin the future he dreamt of. Leaving his daughter and wife dead for a month in the snowy nights and then running across the country to get married? He deserves humiliation.
He sat there a second, stirring at his cup of coffee before turning to his computer to type away. Lana and I began getting ready to travel once again. We hadn't ridden a plane since coming back home from Alaska. She was nervous to see her father face to face again. I didn't blame her, but she was the strongest teenager I have met yet. When we got to Australia, Seth informed me of the plan. The wedding was happening in the afternoon and the police were going to surround the building. We would enter right before they would come in and arrest him. I am getting nervous now, but I couldn't show it with Lana by my side. We dressed in all black dresses, symbolizing the death of our family. When we got to the venue, I squeezed my daughter's hand, giving her a smile of encouragement. I opened the door to the chapel. The people sitting looked behind them, eyes drawn in confusion. Stephen and his bride were too preoccupied to look along with the marriage officiant. It appeared they were at the end of their ceremony and quite literally tying the knot, so I said, "Hi, Stephen." His smile dropped and he finally looked our way. His skin turned pale. "Hi, Dad." Lana said, limping forward to show off her prosthetic. Did you miss us? A man from the crowd began to yell at us to get out, but at this point, it didn't matter. The police walked right past Lana and me and straight towards Stephen. He was put under arrest. Stephen was charged with double attempted murder in the first degree. He was going to serve life in prison with no possibility of parole. My daughter and I went to therapy throughout all this, and we actually met up with his almost wife-to-be. She was lovely. Seth and I began dating soon after, and I was happy as could be. So, what do you guys think of my story? What would you have done differently? Tell us down below in the comments.